having everyone on the phone introduce themselves. I'd really appreciate that. So this is Ginger McCall. I am the Public Records Advocate, Chair of the Committee, or Chair of the Council. Can others go ahead and introduce themselves?
Scott Winkles with the League of Oregon Cities.
Left side.
Tony Hernandez.
All right, I got Scott and Les, and who was that, the last person?
Tony Hernandez.
Tony Hernandez.
Rob Bovet.
Anyone else on the phone? And here in the room, I have Mary Beth Herkert with me. So let's see. Is there anyone else on the call? For those who are more familiar with public meetings law than I am, do we have enough people to go ahead and move forward?
What's the quorum?
We have 6 people. Do we have a quorum?
And how many are on the council, Ginger?
We're counting that up right now. Just a second.
Minus ex officio. Aren't there some ex officio members?
Yeah, we have 12 members and 14 with the ex officio.
Yeah, 12. We have 12 voting members, 14 with the ex officio members.
So you need 7 unless the statute provides otherwise.
Yeah.
Did someone just join?
Did someone just join us?
So how many voting members do you have at the moment?
So right now I have Scott Winkles, Les Seitz, Tony Hernandez, Rob Bovet, Mary Beth Herkert, and myself. So I have 6.
And this is Sharon. I just joined the call.
Perfect.
Michael Crone. I'm on the call too.
All right, so we have a quorum.
Okay, great. Perfect. We have a quorum. And I have received comments from Mark Landauer. Although I had a problem, I couldn't get the attachment. I think it was perhaps not attached correctly. So I'm going to wait to hear from Mark about what was in the attachment because he had some comments on the draft. So basically today we are going to talk about the draft report to the governor, and also I wanted to talk briefly about the surveyed agencies. We agreed on survey questions last time, but we wanted to talk about who we were going to survey. And I also sent around to you a cover letter, and I wanted to talk with you about that to make sure that it's, I guess, the right amount of pushy, because we do want folks to fill it out and to be aware of their obligation to do so, but we don't want to be so pushy that people don't want to participate. And aside from that, I think it would be really helpful if we could discuss setting a next meeting, because we do have 2 pieces of legislation that are going to be introduced in the next session. So we should have a meeting to plan for how we're going to collaborate on that. So first, the governor's report. I received so far feedback from Mark and from Les. Thank you both for that. Les had some valuable comments. I don't know, Les, if you wanted to jump in and just talk a little bit about what some of your suggested additions were.
I don't remember them.
Okay. I will summarize.
Yeah.
So you suggested that I consider adding my own assessment as to what I have concluded or observed about the state of Oregon's public records laws. You also suggested that in the section regarding agencies and data, perhaps we should take head on the issue of costs, because agencies may immediately grab onto the mandate as another mandatory but unfunded cost. So that's having to do with our legislative proposal. So those were your 2 big suggestions. And then the third was to officially add county governments to my purview, because the enabling statute provides for the office to handle state agencies and cities. So those were the 3 comments that Les made, as well as some helpful revisions to the draft itself.
So, and just to let you know, this is Rob Bovet. My members are not quite wanting to go there yet.
Okay. And that's on the county's question, right? adding
Yeah,
some?
I mean, the deal we struck is that we would have the state participate, we would have the cities participate voluntarily, essentially, and then the rest of everybody, including special districts, school districts, and counties, would all watch to see how this works. And there's just not been enough experience to see how it works. So Les certainly can make that recommendation, but we're not ready to go yet.
Okay.
And why would that be, Rob? What would be the objection?
It's not really an objection. It's just that our folks and SDAO, and I can't speak for all the others, but basically Ginger hasn't been given enough staff to make it mandatory that all those folks participate. The city recorders definitely wanted the option of participating. And, you know, looking at, for example, Indiana, they have 3 FTE, Ginger's up to a whopping 2, which is great. But we wanted to see a track record and not see Ginger overburdened such that the mediator, you know, would not have the ability to actually do the work. So our folks were kind of on standby to get added later was the logic, and just to throw them in before we're even fully up and running right away doesn't make any sense to me since we wanted to phase this in.
Can I make just a big this is Michael Cronin. I just wanted to make a big picture sort of suggestion, which is I'm not sure in general that I think the report is a good place to talk about legislative changes that we haven't really discussed as a group. And I don't like this one meeting before submitting the report seems like woefully inadequate, like group discussion of something like that. So I would prefer that the report sort of steer clear of those things at this point, not because I really care one way or another about the substance, but I just don't feel like we as a group have had any opportunity to discuss more legislation than what we've already proposed, and I don't know, it just seems like the wrong place for that to me.
This is Ginger. I'm fine with tabling this for now, and then we can get back to it next year once we have a little bit more bandwidth. But as to the other suggestions that Les had made about me adding an assessment of what I've concluded or observed, or dealing with the cost issue in our legislative proposal regarding annual reporting, what do we want to do about that?
So the cost issue for state agencies is only an issue if state agencies are going to talk about costs at the legislature. And I guess maybe, I wasn't here when attendance started, but if Liz is on the call or in the meeting, maybe she can talk about whether that's a real concern. To me, it seems like the survey is designed specifically to be something people ought to be able to answer fairly easily. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to deal with the cost issue if it gets brought up during the legislative session. We had a little bit of a discussion about that today, Mary Beth and I. And maybe we can discuss that again at some future date when we talk about general planning for our legislation.
Yeah, I just think that everybody needs to be aware that there will probably be agencies that will say that the reporting requirement will have a fiscal impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense for us to address that during the legislative session. We don't necessarily have to address it right here in the report, unless others feel strongly that we should.
I think you're best off addressing it with the governor's office outside of legislative hearings, honestly.
Okay.
If it even comes up, but.
Yeah, it's something I can talk to Emily about. I don't know that Emily's on the call right now, but I have pretty regular meetings with her. So, but we don't necessarily need to bring it up in the report. And then the other question is, do you want me to add something about my observations or conclusions based on, you know, what I've seen in the last 6 months to this report?
I'm neutral. I don't care. I can see the benefit, but is the report supposed to be from you, or is it supposed to be from the PRAC?
From the PRAC, yeah. The legislation requires us to, I do have the legislation with me this time. Apologize. looking for the,
Yeah, you're submitting it on behalf of the council in the first paragraph.
yeah, it's the council that submits the report, and the report is supposed to describe the findings of the council since the council's last report. The report may include recommendations for legislation, which we are including. Also of note, I need to, yeah, no, it's already there in the introduction. Yeah, so that's what we're required to submit. So I don't.
You need to have a kind of a summary of what your observations are, so we have something to compare for next year's report. Because right now you would have nothing to compare.
Yeah, I mean, my observations I would probably file that under the work of my office, potentially in conjunction with after the discussion of requests for assistance and trainings, I'd probably file it there. But, you know, the question is, how comfortable are folks with me going ahead and drafting that? I mean, we have a pretty short timetable on this. So the question is whether or not we'd have to have another meeting to go ahead and approve that language, or whether or not you would be comfortable just signing off on me sort of drafting up something that's my opinion or the opinion of my office.
Well, this is Les. It strikes me that, I mean, this is a brand new office, a brand new position. You've been there for 6 months. I just think that the folks that are funding this and are interested in this would see some value in getting some sense how the Oregon Public Record Advocate views the duties in the office. It doesn't seem, you know, because that's not something the council can do. We can't summarize what you view, and I just think it would be useful information to those who are going to use the report to have some sense, other than statistically, what you've encountered in your 6 months.
This
Yeah,
is
I think that
Michael
makes
Crone. I was just going to say I agree too. I'm interested, and I'm also very comfortable delegating to you authority to write your own opinions without feeling like I need to see them again. So I'm on board with that.
Yeah, this is Tony. I agree. And just to throw out, I don't know if this is an option or something, but how about like submitting an op-ed to, you know, all newspapers or something about your experience so far? If not on the report, that could be another option.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do that in conjunction with our legislation, especially on the annual reporting issue, because I do have an open offer from the Oregonian to submit an op-ed there, and I have pretty good relationships with a lot of the other publications in the state, so that's a good idea. I mean, broadly speaking, I think what I would say as a general matter about the law, I mean, the persistent issues that I'm seeing are related especially to fees. The amount of discretion that agencies are given in granting or denying fee waivers and reductions seems to be creating a lot of confusion. I think that my office does need some additional funding for additional staff because we're receiving, I would say, at least one new request for assistance every day. Some days we're receiving multiple requests. So the volume of that is increasing. I also think that there are necessary clarifications in the law that need to take place surrounding my office. I have an ongoing list of things that I've noticed about the law that are ambiguities that could be strengthened to perhaps give my office a little bit more direction. So those are the sort of broad observations that I have right now. Do others have thoughts on whether or not I should just go ahead and add that section, whether or not you're comfortable with me going ahead with that and having just discretion over that section?
This is Rob Bovett. I'm totally fine with that. I just think you need to make it clear that it's you talking. It's essentially your report, so people don't think that it's the that part of it is the commission's, which it isn't.
Yeah, I will make it clear that this is just my personal opinion, or the opinion of my office, rather.
This is Sharon. I'm fine with that as well.
I'm okay. This is Winkles. I'm okay with it.
Okay. It sounds like we have pretty good consensus on that. Do we want to do a vote on that? Do you think that's, or we'll just do a final vote at the end? Okay, so I will go ahead and I will move forward with that recommendation. Thank you, Les, again, for making that. Otherwise, do folks have any comments on the report, other things you think I should add or things that should be taken out? Again, I did have some comments from Mark, but I apologize for some reason I didn't get the attachment, so hopefully he'll hop on the call a little later.
Hey, Ginger, this is Michael Crone. I have just one comment, and it is for the report and also for the cover letter that you sent us. I would encourage you to fill in the actual ORS, the Oregon Revised Statute citations, in place of the citations to the bill, just because I think it's much easier for people to find the statutes if they're interested in looking than digging up the House bill.
So how would you cite that, since it's a temporary provision? How would you cite it? Because that was one of the questions that Todd and I came up with as we were working on this. Because the provision in the law is temporary, all of the provisions related to the Records Advisory Council.
And Ginger, this is Rob. You can't cite an ORS because it is temporary, and Legislative Council won't assign an ORS to anything other than permanent statute.
Okay. So do folks have an opinion about how I should cite this other than the way that I had cited it?
I do. I can send you basically the section of our manual on our style guide in DOJ, but basically it would be a note that follows the statute, so people will look up the statutes. And if you look on the web page for the statutes, then the notes are actually right there too. I mean, it's true, it's not technically a cite to the ORS, but it gets people close. I don't know. Or you could attach, I suppose attaching the bill would be another way to do it. It just seemed to me
yeah, why don't I do that? I think that's even better. I like attachments.
Okay. That's fine. That's my only comment. I thought everything was great. And I may have to run pretty soon, so.
Okay, great. Do others have comments on this? Oh, Michael, before you run, we should make sure that we deal with the which agencies to survey issue. So if you have thoughts on that, please do pop in with those. Others have comments on the report itself, things that should be added, taken out, revised.
I don't have any comments. Just wanted to say thanks for putting it together. And I also have to jump off by 11, just as a heads up.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We better have a vote to move it forward before everybody pops off.
Yeah, we will make sure we have a vote. So we will wrap up by 11, barring any unforeseen circumstances, which you all have control over. So let's see. Any other comments on the report before we go ahead and move to a vote? All right, speak now. Last chance.
You got mine, right?
Yeah, I did. Mary Beth had a few comments. Let me pull those up real quick.
One was just to kind of, under the training thing, is because there's been a lot of concern about the budget for training, is to just make sure that it says the majority of the trainings have been done in conjunction with the archives records management section, just so people don't think that she's out. And I know that was one of the things early on in the bill that was said, is just to do a kind of a complete training in all public records issues. So that was my only comment, really, was to add that.
Yeah, and I will say nearly all of my government trainings have been done in conjunction with records management folks. So we're sort of doing the 1-2 punch on records management and then public records requests. Pretty much the only trainings that I've conducted that I haven't conducted with records management were the public trainings, and that's just because, no offense to the records management folks, but the public isn't quite as interested in records management practices. So I didn't figure that that would necessarily be valuable to them. You had one more comment, right?
No, that's it.
Okay. All right. Do others have any other comments before we go ahead and take a vote on this? All right, great.
So I move that we accept the report with the couple of additions.
Yeah, so with the addition of, I will I will draft up a section about my conclusions and observations of Oregon's public records law and operations here.
Second.
So, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? All right, great. So then we have consensus on that. So then the next question is the question of which agencies to survey, or which public bodies to survey. Do folks have thoughts on that? I sent that around in my email, in my initial email to you. Do folks have thoughts on that list? The list that I had proposed was all agencies listed in the A to Z listing of state agencies on the Oregon.gov website, which is ambitious. There are a lot of agencies there, but I think it's important that we get a full view. The top 10 cities by population, 10 other randomly selected cities, 10 randomly selected Oregon counties, 10 randomly selected special districts, and 10 randomly selected school districts. What do folks think of that list?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'm cool. Just curious, how is the random selection happening?
It's a good question. Let's see. What do you think, Mary Beth?
With the city, the 10 randomly selected cities, I would probably randomly select small, medium, because you're going to do the 10 largest by population. I don't know, put them in a hat and pull them out. I mean, it's just totally random.
Yeah, I mean, there should be some kind of computer tool where we can do that.
Cool.
Yeah, I would say randomly selected representative local governments. So we have a mix from geographic and population.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I echo the geographic distribution.
Okay.
I would be very comfortable delegating to you, Ginger, the decision about who to survey and how to choose random people. Personally, I think that the suggestions so far have been good, but I would be very willing to trust you to come up with a good representative group.
Okay. What do others think about that?
Well, I think I'd rather have a motion for each city, Michael. No, I'm just joking. I think that's fine. I certainly.
You should have seen the looks of panic here in the room.
No, it seems like you're entirely capable of doing that.
Okay. Does anyone have an
curious
objection to that?
I have no objection. I was just curious about how the random selection would happen, but that's great. Thank you.
Can I
Others
move
have
that
any
we
thoughts?
delegate to Ginger the decision about which government entities to survey and how to select them?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Right?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, great. We will check that off the list. The only sorry, go ahead.
Nope, that was it. Sorry. I don't even know why I said that.
So then the cover letter, which I sent around to you, I apologize for the lateness of that. I wanted feedback on that. If anyone has any, is it the right amount of pushy? We want to ensure that people actually complete the survey. And I do have a date certain in there by which they should complete the survey, but that will be dependent upon when the survey actually gets sent out. Which we may bump that back until the end of January or something if the survey doesn't go out until mid-December. I'll give folks a minute to look at this and then we can talk about it. All right, anyone have any comments? If you have specific line revisions that you wanted to make, if I have some typos or something, please feel free to send those along. Right now, we can just talk about substantive changes. Other than Michael's comment about the citations, which I think is very well taken, and I will also attach the statute to this survey so that they can see what the requirements are and understand why we're conducting the survey. Do others have any other comments?
I think it reads fine. Thank you for putting it together.
Thank you. All right, do we want to go ahead and move forward with this cover letter then? So motion to,
So moved.
okay.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Great, this is the best, most efficient meeting ever. So my final question is, we need to set up another meeting, I think, because we want to make sure we're prepared for the legislative session. We have 2 proposals, and we want to make sure that we can get those passed. And I think it would be great if we could all collaborate on that and come up with a strategy for it. So how do folks feel about meeting early in January or sometime in December, just another brief telephonic meeting on that? With some awareness of the fact that I don't know precisely when the baby's going to be born. She is expected on January 24th, but, you know, these things are always, these things are always a little dicey. So what do folks think about having a meeting in mid-December? Is that too soon? Is that too close to the holidays?
I think we should put it out and see and get our SCPs as soon as possible.
Meeting dates.
Yeah, some meeting dates.
Okay. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do a doodle poll on that. And I do plan on, you know, I can always call into the meeting even if I'm out, provided that I'm not in the hospital on that precise day. I'd be happy to call into the meeting. So it's very important to me that we get these pieces of legislation passed. So let's go ahead. I will send a doodle poll and we can schedule the next meeting. I'll probably give you a variety of dates in mid-December and then some in early January. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Sure.
Yep.
All right. So we have agreed, just to summarize, that the report can go ahead and move forward. I should go ahead and draft the section about my conclusions and observations about the law. I will make it very clear in that section that those are only the opinion of my office. They're not the opinion of the PRAC more broadly. I also will take into account Mary Beth's comments, and if I get substantive comments from Mark, I'll take those into account as well. The agency list of who we're going to survey, I have discretion over that. Broadly, folks feel pretty good about the 6 bullet points that I had submitted. And the cover letter, we can go ahead and move forward with that, with the caveat that we will be attaching the relevant legislation to the cover letter to explain to the agencies why it is we're surveying them. And I will send out a doodle poll for the next meeting. How does that sound?
Perfect.
All right, excellent. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to attend this meeting, and I really appreciate all the work that you've been doing.
Thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Best meeting ever.